Hello, LinkedIn friends. This is Vivek Kuchibutla from BFC Ideas. And today I'd like to talk about something that is always under discussion in the marketing world. Is your agency acting as a partner or is it acting as a vendor? And I'd like to suggest that their behavior is a function of how you hire them. There's a fundamental difference between hiring an agency to execute a scope of work versus hiring them to solve a problem. And that distinction shapes everything that follows: the relationship, the outcome, the value delivered, absolutely everything. So let's start with hiring them based on a scope of work. I like to call this the supplier trap. When you lead with a detailed scope of work, you've already made the crucial decisions. You've diagnosed the problem, you've defined the solution, and you've broken it down into deliverables. And so the agency's job becomes purely executional. Do these tasks, deliver these outputs, stay within these parameters. That reduces the agency to a supplier. You're essentially buying hands and hours, and the relationship becomes transactional. It becomes a series of assignments to complete, or milestones to check off, or invoices to pay. The agency has little room, little interest, little incentive to challenge assumptions, propose alternatives, or bring their accumulated experience to bear on the underlying business issue. The irony of this, and this is very controversial in the industry, but the irony is that you're paying agency rates for what amounts to extra staff. So you're getting their time, but you're not getting their thinking. At least you're not getting the thinking where it matters most. So, what's the other approach? I like to call it the problem first approach. This is where you hire an agency to solve a specific problem. You describe a business challenge. Let's say your customer acquisition costs are climbing. Maybe the brand feels dated to younger audiences. Maybe the product needs a breakthrough in a crowded market. You share context, you share information, constraints, and success metrics with your agency, and then you just step back. Now the agency becomes a partner. Now they bring thinking to the problem. They might reframe it entirely. Maybe what looked like a messaging problem is really a positioning problem or a channel problem or a product market fit issue. The scope of work emerges from the strategic thinking rather than preceding it. This is the approach that unlocks full value of agency expertise. You're not renting their production capabilities, you're accessing their accumulated knowledge, their ability to recognize patterns across similar challenges in different industries. You're accessing their strategic frameworks and their creative problem solving. And you're also availing yourself of their willingness to propose uncomfortable truths. Why does this matter? Well, the supplier relationship is safe and predictable. You always maintain control. You can compare quotes apples to apples. You reduce all risk of scope creep. But you also reduce the possibility of breakthrough thinking. You outsource execution while keeping your strategy in house, which works fine if you're confident that your strategy is sound. However, often the internal team is too close to the problem. They're constrained by organizational politics, which should never be underestimated. Or they might be too invested in past decisions to think clearly, to see clearly. The partner relationship, it's messy. it requires trust, transparency, and real collaboration. You need to share information that you might not be comfortable in sharing. You must be open to having your assumptions challenged. The scope of work is going to evolve as the thinking and the understanding deepens. But this is where the transformation happens. The agency that understands your problem deeply can see solutions that you couldn't. They can connect dots between challenges and patterns that they've seen elsewhere. And they can be bold, they have permission to be bold, where internal teams must be cautious. So, how do you make the shift? This doesn't mean abandoning scopes of work entirely. Even problem first engagements eventually need defined deliverables, timelines, and budgets. The difference is in the sequencing. Problem definition drives scope development, not the reverse. It also doesn't mean that every project warrants this approach. Sometimes you genuinely need execution against a well understood solution. Build this website, run this campaign, produce this piece of content. That's all good. But for the challenges that really matter, the ones where the stakes are high, the path forward is not clear, leading with the problem changes everything. It transforms your agency from a vendor who does what you say into a partner who helps you figure out what you should say and where you should say it in the first place. The question isn't whether agencies can deliver a scope of work. Pretty much every agency can. The question is, are you willing to pay agency rates for supplier level engagement, or whether you want to unlock the full strategic value that makes the premium worthwhile? This is what's going to impact your top line. So that's it. Thank you for listening to me. If you'd like to drop me a line or to look at some of the stuff that BFC Ideas does with advertisers and agencies and how we can help both of you work better together, please visit www.bfcideas.com. Until next time, take care.